morning, or depending when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always told out of Voice of Radio. So today, we need to look at the Pokemon TCG decks that are being completely destroyed by the upcoming rotation. There are certain decks that will not survive the rotation, not even a little bit, and they are the focus of this video. Every deck is losing something come the rotation. Decks like Zacian are losing Metal Frying Pan, which is a little bit sad. And decks like Pikachu and Zekrom are losing Electro Power and Thunder Mountain. But that doesn't mean those decks are unplayable, it means that they lose the odd trick. Yes, there will be a follow-up video in a couple of days showing you the decks that survive rotation and talking about what those decks will not have going forward. This is the video for decks that are completely done in. But some of them have nice parallels. I mean, one fringe deck that I'm going to be sad to see go is Quagsire and Naganadel. You use Naganadel to accelerate energy to itself, and then Quagsire to move that water energy that you accelerated onto Naganadel to your active Pokemon. And we've seen it played with all sorts of attackers. Magikarp and Wailord actually worked with this. Quagsire itself was a good attacker. Volcanion Prism Star was a little bit of a favourite. But the fact of the matter is, that deck can now just use Frostmoth. We don't need Quagsire and Naganadel to make water decks work, because Frostmoth can accelerate water energy to your bench water Pokemon. Worse without Quagsire, because Quagsire could move that energy up to your active even if they weren't a water Pokemon, but those water acceleration decks still survive. This is about the ones that don't. And maybe the most obvious it won't survive deck is Lost March. Lost March loses almost everything. The main attacker was Jumpluff. Jumpluff does 20 damage for each Pokemon in your Lost Zone, except Prism Stars, and it did it for 1 grass energy. Not to mention it had the Skip Bloom that Lost Zoned itself and pre-evolutions to let you bench Jumpluff, making it a pseudo stage 1. That whole line's gone. Your backup attacker in terms of Natu isn't actually a huge loss. Natu is a basic Pokemon that for 2 colourless energy, nowadays it would be twin energy, does 20 damage for each Pokemon in your Lost Zone. But we've actually got Cottony, who comes in as a 40 HP Pokemon that for 2 colourless energy has Lost March. Natu's not a big loss. But Trumbeak is a pretty big loss. You get to Lost Zone it from your hand, and then look at the top card of your opponent's deck, Lost Zone it if it's a supporter. So that was a good way to Lost Zone stuff. And Lost Blender is going away. Lost Zone 2 cards from your hand, and then draw a card. And I mentioned we're still going to have Cottony, and we're actually still going to have Whimsicott as well, which also has Lost March. But how are you getting your cards in the Lost Zone? Like, the 3 best ways to get your cards in the Lost Zone were Skiploom, Trumbeak, and Lost Blender. And they're all going away. You'll still have Pokemon with the Lost March attack, but how are you actually going to get the Pokemon in the Lost Zone? The answer is you're not. Gutted. Now, a couple of other fringe decks which are going away here. One of my personal favourites, and it's a deck which I've been playing since it came out, is Granbull. Now, Granbull from Lost Thunder for 1 fairy energy does 160 damage if you got no cards in hand, and there are plenty of tricks that it's losing. The Magcargo from Celestial Storm that lets you put any card on top of your deck from your deck. Much better now we got Oranguru that swaps a card in your hand for the top card of your deck. That's going away. But honestly, it doesn't matter what else Granbull is losing. Granbull itself is getting rotated. Granbull came out in Lost Thunder. Granbull's going away. It doesn't matter whatever tricks or consistency cards or whatever we're losing. Granbull itself is rotating. And this is actually really sad. I showed you a video the other day about how somebody went 7-0 with this deck in Day 2 of the Limitless TCG tournament. And Day 2 was where all the good people qualified into. And then Granbull went 7-0. And you're hitting weakness on ADP and getting a really easy one-hit KO on a card that is everywhere at the moment. And it seemed like it was just coming back to being awesome and was just turning into a top deck. and then it's gone away, maybe never to return. And that's incredibly sad for me. Another fringe deck which did see a fair bit of play and success here and there is Magcargo. Now this revolved around the Magcargo from Celestial Storm, which is rotating, and the Magcargo GX from Lost Thunder, which is rotating. So we are losing the two main Pokemon in the deck. Magcargo from Celestial Storm, as previously mentioned, let you search your deck for any card and put it on top of your deck. Magcargo's ability, once during your turn, let you discard the top card of your deck, but if it was a basic energy, you attached it to one of your Pokemon. And it would be, because you would make sure it was with Magcargo. Then free energy, 50 damage, plus you can discard as many fire energy, or basic energy, but they'd all be fire, from Magcargo as you like, and then do 50 more for each one discarded. And it really was just a Magcargo and Magcargo deck. Magcargo for consistency and putting energy on top of your deck, and then Magcargo for accelerating energy and smashing. Don't sleep on the GX attack that just discarded the top 5 cards of your opponent's deck. You didn't even have to use it to deck them out. Just wait until they've got like 10 cards left in their deck, you're going to mill half of them, and the chances are you're going to hit a really good card that they'd rather you hadn't discarded. Gutted. And this card did get around here and there. This was not a completely unknown deck. Yohei Takeda went and got 19th place at the International Championships in Melbourne with this deck. That's pretty good. At the same tournament, we saw a 42nd place finish for Sean Takamoto. So if it was making day 2 at the International Championships, that sounds good. Over at the regional in Malmo, we did see a 21st place finish for Alessandro Cremascoli, he who's taking part in our Dragon Gym Challenge, as well as a 24th place finish for Bernardo Diaz, and a 27th place finish for Theodore Skavland. Apologies for the pronunciation. My point is, this wasn't a giant tournament-winning deck all the time, but it kept finding its way into the top cut of really big tournaments. Now, moving into what is probably the biggest loss of all the decks that are going, Malamar. Malamar is rotating out, and honestly, Malamar itself isn't really a deck. Malamar is half a deck, the other half of which could be made up of a whole bunch of different things. Now, Malamar had the ability Psychic Recharge, which lets you accelerate an energy Psychic from your discard pile to one of your bench Pokemon. We've seen this ability before on Bronzong, it was one of the best decks in the format, and Electric, it was one of the best decks in the format. And Psychic is losing a whole bunch of tricks at the moment. They're losing Mysterious Treasure to search out cards and get a bit more consistency. They're losing Spell Tag, a lovely tool which drops 4 damage counters when the Pokemon that is Psychic that has a Spell Tag is KO'd. But honestly, losing Malamar is what really hurts here. Although the other tricks will make Psychic decks as a whole weaker. Now, really, in recent weeks, there have been 2 builds of Malamar which have been accelerated over the others. One of them is the non-GX Giratina. Now, to be fair, Giratina is rotating, as is Malamar, and that was a deck that really liked Spell Tag, which is also rotating. So it is losing basically everything. But you've got Giratina there that for free energy does 130 damage. And you can bring it out of the discard and put it straight onto your bench, and then drop 1 damage counter onto each of 2 of your opponent's benched Pokemon. And of course, you did 130 for free energy as a single prize Pokemon, and then if you got KO'd, you just use the ability to bring it back. And then if you got KO'd again, you just use the ability to bring it back again, and again, and again. And if you had 2 Malamar on the bench and 1 energy in your hand, you needed nothing to just keep going with Giratina over and over and over again. It liked the copycat Mimikyu, which unfortunately is also rotating. And it does tend to rely on Jirachi, which isn't rotating, but Jirachi tends to rely on a skateboard so you can retreat even if you go to sleep, which you do with Jirachi's ability. And a skateboard is rotating? Honestly, this deck is just wrecked. You're losing Malamar, you're losing Giratina, you're losing a skateboard, you're losing all the psychic tricks. And that's kind of it, unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen. This deck is gone. The other Malamar build is Mewtwo and Mew. Mewtwo and Mew is that phenomenal card which sees a huge amount of play. And Mewtwo and Mew has got the ability Perfection, which lets you copy the attack of any Pokemon that is a GX or an EX that is either in your discard pile or is on your field. And the Psychic version has been very popular because there's lots of really good Psychic Pokemon we've got at the moment. You've got Latios GX, which has an attack which makes it immune to tag teams next turn, which can be pretty good. It's a deck that tends to play Aurora Energy, so it does also sometimes play Ultra Necrozma GX, does 20 damage base, you discard all basic Psychic, and do an extra 80 for each one attached to Ultra Necrozma. That's pretty good. But that's also rotating out. It is still keeping some of the Psychic type attackers, mind you. It's still keeping Espeon and Deoxys, which is played a little bit to drop a whole bunch of damage counters. It's keeping Trevenant and Dusknoir, which is a rather nice hand disruption card. It's keeping Gengar and Mimikyu, which punishes you for having lots of trainer cards in your hand. So it's keeping a bunch of the attackers, and it's keeping Mewtwo and Mew, but it is losing Malamar. Here's the thing. We can still play this, but we have to go back to the kind of lists that were played at the World Championships, which means you're playing Welder and the odd Psychic Energy here or there. So if you're using Latios GX, you Welder and attach a Psychic Energy. If you're using Gengar and Mimikyu, you have to unfortunately get 2 Psychic Energy on there, and you have to do that manually, which is a little bit sad. There is another list of Mewtwo and Mew that we do see occasionally, revolving around Aurora Energy and Rainbow Energy, so you can then play whatever attackers you like, but that list really likes using Solgaleo GX's GX attack to accelerate 5 energy from your deck, and that's being rotated, and Rainbow Energy is being rotated, which means you can no longer use 4 Rainbow, 4 Aurora Energy. So essentially, that means you can still play Mewtwo and Mew and it will still be a really good deck, but you're basically now being forced into playing the Welder version of it. And the Welder version is cool. We like the Welder version, but I think it's very fair to say at this point that it is Welder version or bust. I don't think you're going to really be able to make it work with either of the other 2 main builds. The good news is the International in Melbourne was won by Nico Alabas, playing the Welder version of Mewtwo and Mew. Tord Reklev got top 8 in that same tournament with the same list. And that build is losing very, very little. It's basically losing Naganadel GX, the one that's got Stinger. So it does lose Stinger, but that's basically the only card it loses, other than a skateboard for Jirachi. So I'm feeling pretty good that that's going to be the way to play Mewtwo and Mew in the future. And finally, and it's a loss that some people are sad about and some people are delighted about, but Oranguru from Ultra Prism has gone away. And Oranguru really was a deck in and of itself. It was a stall deck that revolved around just running your opponent out of resources. Made top 4 at the Internationals in Melbourne, and it's lost a few of its tricks. Magcargo GX was one that it did like to play, that's going. Ditto Prism Star opened up a whole bunch of teching options, that's unfortunately going. Faber to Lost Zone Energy and Tools is unfortunately going, though Tool Scrapper is coming back, so that might not be the biggest loss in the world. Honestly, most of the tricks for Cinccino Mill is staying around, but you're not going to have Oranguru anymore. Cinccino for drawing cards, yes, but Oranguru for recovering them is going away. Some lists have been playing Shedinja, not the one that got top 4 in Melbourne, but it has been seen a lot. Shedinja just stops you giving up a prize. It's basically a Pokemon that turns into a Life Dew. Fallen out of favour a little bit, but it is rotating now, so that's a little bit sad. Now, I've got good news for you before we finish this video. There is an obvious and natural replacement for this, and it is the Excadrill from Unified Minds. For 1 fighting energy, you get to shuffle 4 cards from your discard pile into your deck, as opposed to Oranguru putting 3 cards on the bottom of your deck. Now, there are some downsides to this. It is a stage 1, not a basic. And it is a fighting energy rather than a colourless, and that's actually a pretty big deal because it means you can't use recycle energy. One of the really cool things about Oranguru was using recycle energy, and then when it got KO'd you could just reuse it because it got recycled back into your hand, so it let you really cut down on the energy line. So now if you want to play Excadrill, you've got to be playing more energy or more energy recovery, and you've got to be playing a stage 1 rather than a basic. It is probably going to be a little bit less consistent, but if you are really hankering for that control style of deck that Oranguru gives you, Excadrill is here for you, ladies and gentlemen. Excadrill is here for you. And there we go, those are the decks that are leaving. Really, the big decks that are leaving break down to Malamar and Oranguru. All the other decks I've mentioned in this video have seen play and success, but in terms of big decks that we expect to see around the top cut of every tournament, it is Oranguru and Malamar. But those other decks were always there hanging around. In a couple of days, tomorrow, we'll see what time I've got, I will be showing you all the decks that survive rotation, but let's just say no deck has gotten out alive, all decks are losing something. But for now, ladies and gentlemen, I want to hear from you guys. I want to know which of these decks you're sad to see go. I want to see which decks are not going to be viable anymore that you've thought up that I haven't included in this video. So go nuts in the comment section, but please remember the rule. Be nice, would ya? And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at TheWassy, and Twitch for some live action at twitch.tv/PTCGRadio. If you want to support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and all that good stuff, head on over to patreon.com/PTCGRadio, or you can do exactly that. And please do make sure you're checking out youtube.com/WassyPlays, where you can find out about a whole bunch of games that don't have Pokemon in, but are pretty gosh darned awesome nonetheless. But by far the most important thing as always, look after yourselves till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.